Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Ratitude Podcast. And like always, I have just amazing friends, amazing people I meet, amazing guests here. And today is an incredible day because I've got Howard Wolin here with me. And I've been thinking all day, how am I going to introduce Howard? Because he's got such a unique background, a unique history, a unique way of thinking, incredible experiences in life. And our audience is going to be in for a big treat today. Howard's a doctor. He's a medical doctor. He's a psychologist. He's an incredible human being. He's out there. So we're going to talk about some out there kind of things. So be ready for an incredible podcast here. Howard, welcome to the Ratitude Podcast.
Very wonderful to be here with you, Robert.
Now, I want to start with kind of how your mind developed. And it's so interesting that, you went from being a trained medical doctor to what you do today, which is just amazing. So kind of give us a little bit of the history of Howard Wolin and how you became to be this incredible human being.
So the history is that I started out born in New York City into a family that was but a disrupted family. A father who was an alcoholic and a dentist, a mother who was herself depressed, and later came to learn, and this is talked about not uncommonly, that when we come in with a purpose of the sort that I have, we come into a situation that at first we may not know why we're there. And that was my case. But over time, we're there and we're directed to where we're going to evolve into. And you don't know that when you're in an early state of affairs in a tumultuous place. You learn much later on where you are heading and why you were heading there. And so in a childhood that was disruptive, I had some very good experiences. Unfortunately, I had a lot of infections with strep throat, and I was one of the first ones in 1947 that had a very loving GP who gave me penicillin, which was a lovingly done thing, except for the fact that penicillin winds up killing your gut biome, and you wind up sick and compromised without knowing it, because in 1947, you weren't as conscious as you were later on. Then somewhere around the age of 12 or 13, for reasons that I didn't know then, I became a very, very intense scholar in high school and in grade school. So intense, studied very intensely. And somewhere in the age 12 or 13 range, there was a scare in the Bronx, New York, of polio. And a lot of people got frightened, and I was given the polio vaccine. I didn't know till much later that vaccine was grown in monkey kidney tissue. And along with the vaccine came a whole bunch of monkey viruses that got put into the vaccine and put into me and rendered me symptomatic in many ways over many years until I figured it out. So then I went to high school. I became very, very bright in my studies. And a gift that I had was, if there was a surface of something, the surface was very interesting, but what I was interested in was why something was being defined as a surface, what the heck was underneath it. And I decided, after having a psychotherapy in my teenage years with that same wonderful doctor who became a psychiatrist, I decided I was going to be a psychiatrist. I had no idea what a psychiatrist was, but I said, I like this guy. I think I'm going to be a psychiatrist, but not only a psychiatrist, I'm going to be a psychoanalyst, whatever the hell that was. So then I woke up and said, what do you have to do to become a psychoanalyst? And it turned out that I had to go to medical school. So at the age of 18, I went to college. I went to pre-med. In the days in 1952, when every other guy wanted to be a doctor, and if you were in the lab and looking at a slide, all the guys that wanted to be a doctor wanted to disrupt you so that you wouldn't be a doctor. And so a lot of that went on. And then, so in college, I was a pre-med. I was celebrated for being a wonderful guy who knew a lot about liberal arts. I had a lovely wife who I married at age 22, who was in college with me. I went to New York University in New York. She came in my second year, and she was the only girl of 100 in a whole men's school. And it kind of sounds a little bit like when Harry met Sally. I took a look. I said, "This is the one for me." And I fell in love, and we got married at the end of college. And I went to medical school in Louisville, Kentucky. And in college, I was blessed with the fact that my wife was in organic chemistry with me. And the blessing was that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And she walked me through it because she's a brilliant, brilliant woman. And I got through medical school or college. I went to Louisville, Kentucky in medical school. There was no one there then. 2 planes would land all day. A friend of mine who in World War II was in the Army, enlisted and wanted to be a doctor. He was 40 when I was 22. He came and bought a house, and that was a wonderful place for us to have fun. I finished medical school and decided, where am I going to go? I said, okay, either Hawaii or Chicago, Illinois. Why Chicago? There was a brilliant doctor who was the last guy to be analyzed by Sigmund Freud. His name was Roy Grinker. He had a place in Michael Reese Hospital, and that's where I went for my training in psychiatry after an internship in medicine. In those days, there were only 2 medicines, 2 or 3, Elavil for depression and Thorazine for psychosis. Thank God there were only 2. I decided very early on that any of them basically did nothing except cause a lot of side effects. So I finished the residency. I was the chief resident. And then at the age of 30, I went into medical practice in psychiatry. I treated thousands of people who were geriatric patients, many of whom were sequestered in nursing homes and promptly died, sadly, with children that hated them, some that loved them. I treated adolescents, and I treated them with psychoanalytic psychotherapy. I learned about 20 years ago that no psychiatrist did psychotherapy anymore. Most of the people who do psychotherapy are psychologists or social workers. I had a very intense experience, not only with them, but I evaluated thousands of addicts and learned something about that. And then I decided after 2 or 3 years of practice that I wanted to be a psychoanalyst. What did that entail? Another 6 years of training while you were practicing psychiatry. So it was classwork every weekend, the psychoanalysis of 4 patients with training supervisors. And I realized after that experience of time, the gain that I had there was to learn that if there was a diagnosis of somebody, that was a label. And labels, in my opinion, have only value in bottles. I learned that you had to look again below the surface. I became an analyst practicing psychotherapy and psychoanalysis at the age of 39 and said, oh my God, this is the most exciting thing that I could ever do. And I did it very well, and people made some shifts. I worked with people who were suicidal. I worked with people who were self-destructive, addictive. I worked with people who were self-sabotaging. I worked with people who I later came to know when I was with my Native Americans were people who were nice one minute and the next minute wanted to tear your eyes out. I worked effectively. I helped them to some degree, but I became more and more unhappy, not knowing that really what I was here for was to work with people spiritually and to help free them from negative energy that was behind all of those things, self-sabotage, suicidality. And there was a side piece. I started working in my early 40s with kinesiology. And kinesiology really isn't a pendulum or wires. they validate what you know unconsciously, but is validated with the work with the kinesiology. And then I started working with a guy in California who worked as a chiropractor and did a technique called total body modification. The English translation is that you have a menu of body locations and toxins. And with the kinesiology, you identify the toxins and the body parts. You write down on a paper the locations and the toxins, have the person hold the paper on their chest, tap it, and then layer by layer, all of that stuff goes. I read recently that the mainstream discovered that every cell in the body is conscious. I knew that years ago. Everything is conscious. This table, the computer, the rocks outside in the lake outside of me, every one of us is conscious. Every part of our cell is conscious. And that work led to being able to help free people from a lot of physical things. I then also used the work to realize that what was making people unhappy sometime were curses from other people. That was something I learned from this person. He didn't understand what I learned a bit later. I met later a woman who was the granddaughter of Chief Eagle, who was the chief of a healing tribe that was 300 years old. They had 3 reservations in the States, and they had a presence in Tibet, and they worked with crystals. And the way they worked with crystals was you were able with your psychic and spirit guides to pick out a crystal that specifically had the frequencies that would help along with the work that you did to reconstruct past life experiences that led to self-destructiveness, etc. And these crystals would, with their energy and the work of reconstruction, clear out negative energies in people. And from them, what I learned is when we come into the universe, this was fascinating, we come in usually with 3 spirit guides: life, love, and health. Life is all life matters, where Robert's going to live, what he's going to do for a living, how he's going to tie his shoes. Same with Howard and everyone else. Spirit guide of love is love and soulmate. And spirit guide of health is mental, emotional, spiritual health, and physical health. When we come into the universe, whenever we pipe into the universe, those 3 spirit guides live in our spiritual body. And if those spirit guides are free of negative energy, then we have a whole universe in which to pick high frequency choices: a love life, a woman, a career, something good. But sometimes when people come in, they choose the dark. And in that choice, they pick up a lot of possessions and negative energies that reside in their spirit guides. They become unfree and they become determined to do evil. Other people come in without that determination and get pelted with evil from other energies. And often what happens is that people who come in also make a choice to work for the light against the dark. They too can get attacked by evil and get possessed by evil and come into a future life riddled with stuff that makes them really unhappy and miserable until they find someone like me or the Native Americans who frees them, and then they can go on to live a life that can be productive and happy with all the light coming in.
Okay, Howard, let me stop you here. Okay, we went from being a medical doctor, a psychoanalyst. Now you're talking about spirit guides. You're talking about possessions. You're talking about curses. I want to understand, how did you move from sort of traditional to this way out there kind of place? I want my audience to understand, because this is a huge thing.
I came of it because I realized somewhere, I didn't know this going along, I realized somewhere that the reason I really came in was to free people. And in order to do that, it took me through these roads. I got there at a very late age. I got there in my late 40s, and I got there. And once I got there, I realized that's exactly where I was going to be. It just evolved. It evolved through the unhappiness of the psychoanalytic work. It involved through knowing something happened, but there could be more that could happen that could make people feel even freer and happier.
Well, I think this is important because early on you said, as you were kind of going through your childhood, you used the word purpose until you discovered your purpose. And this is kind of your purpose, is to free people, which I think is just such a beautiful thing. And it reminds me, though, in part of what my teachings are, and it's based on a phenomenal book that I read 25, 30 years ago called The Celestine Prophecy, is that there's messages or guides or signs along our path, and we're all on different paths.
Right.
And you had this particular path that's so unique. It's just like, it's really, really kind of cool. And I just want our audience to know, because I want them to see and look for, what are the signs on my path? What are the messages along my path? It doesn't matter what age you're at, that your own purpose, whether it's your life purpose or even more significantly, your spiritual or your higher level purpose might be your soul purpose.
One of the important things is to pay attention to the fact that if you're doing whatever the heck you're doing and you're getting some satisfaction, but you're not really, and you may not know what your real purpose is, you'll know this though, that you're not really happy because there's something missing. And then when you find that and you're directed to it without even saying, I'm going to go in that direction, your soul takes you into that direction where you really know you want to be. And when I met the Native Americans, they helped, they taught, but all of that stuff was in me about spirit guides, about who I was in an ancient past life. We helped research it and realize where it was. But there's another piece of this. It was very clear to me that classical medicine wasn't the answer. It wasn't going to solve anything. I had an internist recently who was honest enough to say, I went to medical school. There are 150,000 medicines, and I don't think any of them really cure anything, which is really quite an admission from somebody. But the gift is that somewhere along the way you realize that there's something not right. And the universe, I learned this from my native, the universe brings you those things that will take you to where you need to go, to where you want to be and are meant to be. In Yiddish, in Yiddish language, the word is Geschäft. It means where you're meant to be.
Yeah, because I remember I asked you early on, I want to do what you're doing. It's the coolest thing in the world. And you said, you can't. That's not your path. That's not your journey. And I was really bummed because I want to help people. I want to free people too.
Yeah, but you free them in different ways, Robert. You give them the gift of you, the gift of what you help them with. And you've told me some of your own history and where you've been and who you worked with. And so it comes in different ways. And yours came in, it seems to me, you're satisfied with where you are, with what you're doing, what you've done, how you've helped. And your path also was circuitous too. You were in an academic situation, you were in an engineering situation, and now you're in a different kind of situation.
In a different kind of situation. Yes. So Howard, if someone starts to work with you, or how does someone even say, oh, I'm going to go work with Howard? Like how would that work?
It's a very difficult situation, my work, because the possessions that reside on people's spirit guides and soul, their goal is to hold on to the person and control them and take over them. If they come to someone like me, there are two types of people that come. There are the people that know that they have this and they're willing to come and go through it. And I say to them, and the going through it, you're going to become skeptical of me because the spirits don't want me to free you. They hate me. So what they're going to do is bring up skepticism and keep you away. There are other people, either the spouse or the child, that the possessions are so intense that the other spouse or the parent have to come to me. And with the permission of the soul of the possessed person, I work through the parent or the spouse to free them because these possessions hate me. It becomes a very difficult job because very few people are aware enough of this. There's some people who just think this is nutty stuff, and there are other people who have possessions that don't want to get near it because their possessions don't want them to get near it. So a lot of the times I work with people who are parents or spouses, and they come and they start to work.
Okay, so you use the word possessions. I'm not sure that I know, or
The negative energies that attach to people and render them self-sabotaging, self-destructive, suicidal, addictive. In psychiatric terms, they would be defined that way, but at the core of it, it's these energies that are driving them to be in that particular direction.
Okay, so are you like an exorcist? Like in the movie?
Not exactly, but yes.
Okay.
With the crystalline work, with the crystals that I pick, and with the work that I do to identify layer by layer what's going on, ultimately, yes, that's what I do. I get rid of all these energies. And when that happens, all the light comes in and people are happy.
How does someone know if they have a possession in them or a curse in them? How does someone know?
They may just know that something's going on, that's not right in them, that's driving them, or they may have someone tell them. A lot of people don't know because they don't want to get, the possessions don't want them to get anywhere near it.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people who know and they say there's something wrong, but it isn't going to be fixed by psychiatry or psychotherapy and it's very interesting. I work with thousands of addicts and very often they go to a rehab center. And then they go again and again and again and again. It's not that the rehab center isn't an effective place to do it, but their possessions want to keep them addicted. So they get out, they have a brief period of something or not, and then they get back into the same thing. Likewise with self-destructive patterns, self-sabotaging patterns. Someone will divorce Sarah and marry Harry and then do it all over again. Those are possessions that are driving that. I mean, it's often defined as psychotherapeutic issues in them, psychiatric issues, but very often it isn't that.
Are there psychiatric mental illnesses, or is everything just a possession and curse?
There are defined psychiatric illnesses. At the core of most of them, there are these kinds of energies, including even in bipolar people.
Mm.
If you look at all of the treatments that are therapeutically drug-wise, Lord knows they don't work very well. And that's why in my early psychiatric days, I realized they ain't doing much. They're either narcotizing somebody, putting them to sleep, or they're giving them a whole host of other symptoms that are just terrible. That was part of what drove me out of it.
So you're able to very quickly see into people, not just, you don't even have to seemingly see them if you just know their name or hear their name. How does that work? How do you work?
I have about 5,000 spirit guides. I have research guides. I have psychic guides. I have traveling guides. I have healing guides. The research guides research someone and know most of the people that I've worked with in the world, I've never met. There's an example in my webpage of a woman who came to me with a 2-year-old son who, for reasons that she didn't understand, was literally biting and hitting the family and biting people bloody. He was 2 years old. I got a crystal. I started doing work to see where that came from, and I cleared out the energies. Now he runs their conglomerate. I often, when I work with parents and spouses, I often don't ever meet them. When I was in my office in Chicago, I would meet the person who wanted me to work, either on them or someone else. But if it was a spouse or a child, I never met them, and I freed them.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that with my spirit guides, which can research to see if someone has this energy. A lot of people come to me and say, can you work on so-and-so? Is that a person that has problems? And if they don't, I see it, and I say no, because why fix it if it isn't broken, right? So, and some people can just be plain old unhappy and miserable and not be possessed. A lot of people.
Yeah. So you mentioned a website. What's your website, and are there testimonials there? What's on your website?
There are testimonials on the website. It's Wolin Wellness Center.com.
Okay, and we'll put that into the post when we post this, when this goes live.
And also, if people are interested, my office manager can send them an elaborate description of how I work, and also 2 articles I wrote about crystals. And crystals really, in Native American terms, they heal because they have a lot of very special energy. In scientific terms, they have piezoelectric effects, and those effects can help heal people as well. But people often pick crystals for themselves, and they don't realize that they have to pick a specific crystal with the specific frequencies that are going to do them well, not just to heal them, but to help them in their house, to help them with their business, to help them have the energy in the house better. There have to be special frequencies in the crystals, and I can determine which crystals they are to help people.
Now, someone is very, very skeptical. They say, I've never had a spirit guide. I've never had a possession. I've never had blah, blah, blah. But their life is indicative of whether it's addiction or mental illness or whatever. How do you work with someone that's skeptical?
You don't.
You don't?
No.
Okay, so you have to be open.
You have to be open to do this. And if someone is skeptical, it's either because the possessions don't want them to clear the junk in them, and or separate of that, they're not possessed, but they're just plain old skeptical. And so if someone is resistively skeptical, you're not going to drag them to the water to drink.
What about the spouse or the parent that maybe is skeptical, but they're open, but whoever they're wanting to impact says, no way. Can you work with someone like that?
I will work with the spouse or the parent. I will have the permission of their partner or the child. Spiritually, I'll have their soul's permission, and I can work with them. And the parent takes the sequences that I have and clears them, has the crystal somewhere else, and they do the work. And the person, because their possessions won't let them directly, the person heals, and their soul has given me permission, and they're healed and they're fine.
Okay, so you'd mentioned something, a word there, sequence. What is a sequence, and how does someone work with that, or how do you work with that?
A sequence is my spirit guides finding out what went on either in this life or a past life. In a particular past life, what energies, what people directed the energies, what curses came in the energies. They're represented and put down on a piece of paper. The spouse or the parent or the person who can work with me directly takes those pieces of paper. They'll put them under the crystal to clear the energy. They'll rip them up to clear the energy. They'll burn them to clear the energy. And once that energy is cleared, layer by layer, more and more of the possessions are destroyed. And more of, once they're all destroyed, all the light comes in and the person is freed.
Wow.
That's what happens, yes.
That's what happens in a nutshell.
Yeah.
One could argue that that's like a placebo effect. What would be your response to that?
My response is to know where these people are when they're freed, and to retrospectively know from other people who free them that this goes on for a very, very long time. Once they're gone, they're gone. And I hear about it from them in the immediate present and over time in the future. Like this little 2-year-old, I heard from the mother many years later. He runs their shop. I mean, he's a fine kid. And a lot.
Yeah.
I worked with a lot of kids, by the way, who were compromised, and that to me gives me a great deal of gratification to work with kids.
Sure. So what are you doing now? What are your goals?
My goals are to continue to do this. I would add that one of the things that happens because I do this, when I was a psychiatrist and doing the psychiatric work and not this, none of the negative energies ever went after me, whether they were from whichever source, a parallel universe, a different dimension, a satanic energy. As soon as you start to do this work, they go after you.
Yeah.
But that's the work that I'm here for. I'm 85 years old at the moment, and that's the purpose that I have, and that's what I plan to do for as long as I'm on the planet.
All right. So now if someone wanted to work with you or wanted to try it out, is there a tryout period to see,
The way, no,
how
the
does
way
this
the way they
feel?
would do this, they would call me. I would ask their permission to research either them or their relatives to see what energies, if any, were there that needed work. And if that was the case, I would say to them, these are the energies. These are the number of sequences at the moment that might need to be cleared. This is the crystal that might do it. And then I would say to them, if this is something you want to do, then let me know and we'll do it. But I always ask their permission to research first. And if they give me that permission, I research. And then it goes from there. I work with people all over the world. So it doesn't, I don't need to meet them. So
You happen to be in Naples, Florida, where I happen to be right now too. So we did have lunch a couple of weeks ago, which was kind of cool. But let me just tell my audience that I heard about Howard through a friend of a friend. And I said, well, I'm open. I'm done with engineering. I'm done with my track career. I'm into neuroscience now. I'm into everything. And I decided I was going to explore working with Howard for myself and people around me, people in my circle of influence. And just to let my audience know, it's been a wonderful experience. It's why I invited Howard on to this program. Because if you're open, if you have a challenge or issue or something that you haven't been able to solve in your lifetime, it might be worth checking out Howard's website, giving him a call, giving him permission for his spirit guides, the research ones, to do some research and just have the conversation, see if you're open. I would do it. I did it. And I'm very happy with the results.
well, thank you, Robert. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So Howard, we're kind of wrapping up here now. Is there any final message that you would like to leave our audience? And we have a wide audience all over the world. So you work with people all over the world, and that's great. Somehow we're the number 4 ranked podcast in Argentina in health and fitness category. And in Romania, we're in the top 10. And so I have no idea who's listening to our program. I love you all. But Howard, are there any final messages that you have for a wide range of people that might be listening to us?
My message would be, if you have a sense that there's something going on in you that's disturbing your life, whether it's with a relationship, with some unhappiness, some addictive stuff, and you have a sense that what you've done isn't fixing it, and you're open to the possibility that there could be another way to do it, I think this may be of some help to you, and I would be honored to help you.
Howard, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you, working with you, and now having you on our podcast to share kind of a unique approach to helping free people in the world. And thank you for doing that. And thank you for being a guest on our show.
And thank you for having me, Robert. I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
All right. Keep freeing people and keep loving on everyone. And so will I.